3 years ago today, I was watching Game of Thrones with my girlfriend, and we ended Season 3, Episode 8. It was like 11 o'clock, I was going to be going home within the next hour and a half, and for the first time in our dating life, she asked me if I wanted to go home early. And at the time, I didn't really understand why she was kind of encouraging me to go home, and I kind of said, no, I want to stay, let's watch the next episode. She gave me a little more pushback, asking if I really wanted to watch another one, and I said, yeah, of course, I'm into Game of Thrones, let's watch it. And then, 40 minutes later, I realized why she encouraged me to go home. Because the final episode that we watched that night was The Reigns of Castamere, otherwise known as The Red Wedding. And after 3 years and watching dozens of other great TV shows, this is still my favorite episode in TV by a good margin, and today I want to explain why. If you ask the overwhelming majority of Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire fans, they're going to tell you that The Red Wedding is great because it subverts your expectations. It's a plot twist. And while this is definitely true, what makes it stand out as a quote-unquote plot twist is the way in which it happens. A common trend in big blockbuster movies and TV right now is to throw you a quote-unquote plot twist, but it doesn't really make sense. It works in the moment, and it's definitely something exciting to watch, but when you actually break it down and really think about what's happening in front of you, the reason it works as a plot twist because it doesn't actually fit properly into the plot. The sequel series in Star Wars did this a lot, with kind of subverting your expectations just for the sake of subverting your expectations, instead of actually creating a cohesive plot twist. But The Red Wedding does the exact opposite of this, and that's why I believe it to be the best quote-unquote plot twist of all time. If you were to go back today, or if you've rewatched Game of Thrones since your first watch, you will see the hints for The Red Wedding basically everywhere. Specifically for me, I read A Game of Thrones, the first book of A Song of Ice and Fire, a few months back, and there are about a dozen hints to the phrase betraying the Starks and killing Robb in the first book alone. If you are a very attentive reader or watcher, it's not that you'll just see it coming in the actual episode, you will see the build-up to Robb and Catelyn's eventual demise as early as Season 2. There's a lot of great symbolism of the phrase stomping on Stark flags. Walder Frey himself is described as someone that you cannot trust, someone that doesn't abide by the typical norms of Westeros as early as Season 2 and Book 1. Robb Stark himself actually creates a ton of red herrings on his own, the first major one being him locking up Grey Wind. Catelyn Stark describes this in both the book and the TV show as a bad move because the direwolves are intrinsically linked to the Starks. Another one being when Robb goes to cut off Rickard Karstark's head. It's not a clean blow, it takes him a lot of hits, it's really bloody and really mangled, and Rickard Karstark himself says that this is going to be a bad omen moving forward. The final and most obvious mistake and red herring is just the marriage of Jaime Westerling. Catelyn and basically everyone around Robb tells him that this is a really, really bad decision, and that Walder Frey is probably the worst person in all of Westeros that he could have done this to. Unfortunately for show watchers though, probably the biggest moment of foreshadowing for the Red Wedding isn't actually in the TV show. In the TV show, while Arya is at Harrenhal, she is a cupbearer for Tywin Lannister. He is currently holding Harrenhal. In the books, this is actually a different character. It is Roose Bolton. Now, the reason this foreshadows the Red Wedding is because Harrenhal is currently under control of the Lannisters, so why would Roose Bolton, a Stark man, be holding a Lannister castle? You put two and two together, it's because Roose Bolton is in cahoots with the Lannisters. Now, I can go on for 20 to 30 more minutes, maybe an hour, just describing all of the foreshadowing for the Red Wedding that is all throughout A Song of Ice and Fire and A Game of Thrones. With the point of this being, the reason the Red Wedding works so well isn't because it subverts your expectations in the actual story, but because it subverts your expectations in the meta, in the real world, in your actual life. We as a society have basically become accustomed to our main characters being protected. They often have a lot of plot armor, and even when they make massive mistakes, the repercussions usually aren't too major. But in the real world, if these mistakes were to be made by people like me and you, chances are something really, really bad would happen. And A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, especially the earlier seasons, are supposed to be very grounded in reality. Quote-unquote main characters are treated less like main characters and more like actual individual people. And when these actual people make actual mistakes, there are actually real consequences. George actually lays out the Red Wedding in front of you dozens of times. We are told throughout both the book and the TV show that something bad is coming for the Starks. Robb is making mistakes, Catelyn is making mistakes, and they're basically walking to some sort of demise. Because the people in the meta in the real world aren't used to seeing actual consequences for our main characters, when it actually happens, it is just the hardest punch in the gut. You're just in such a state of shock. You're so blown away by what is happening. You're just sitting there like what the hell is happening? And just to tie this together with another show that I really, really love, season 1 of Arcane at the end of episode 3 does the same exact thing, and I would put money on it. They got the idea from the Red Wedding, and it works amazingly well there too. So just to kind of summarize my points here, the reason that I believe The Red Wedding is the greatest episode in TV history is not because it pulls some crazy subversion of expectations that breaks the characters, no. It's because in the actual story, it is set up dozens of times, and the only reason it is such an aggressive and egregious plot twist and punch to the stomach is because we as readers and watchers just aren't used to this level of content. And unfortunately, many shows and stories still haven't learned from this. They're still protecting their main characters, they're still putting everyone in these cute little bubbles where nothing bad can happen to them. And all this really does for me as a reader and a watcher is tell me that A Song of Ice and Fire really is just one of the greatest stories ever told, and it might not ever be topped in my lifetime, at least in terms of mass general media. Maybe there's something else out there that I haven't read that is even better. I've had a bunch of people tell me to read Malazan, Book of the Fallen. That's probably going to be my next read after I finish The Feast for Crows and Dance with Dragons, but I will keep you guys updated. As always, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.